Hello, Jane. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well, Nizam. It's lovely to meet you.
And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to interview you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm really looking forward to it. Quite exciting.
And friends, we have Jane here. So let me tell you guys a little bit about her. Okay, so she's a single mother and, having wonderful kids. And one more thing is she's a fitness trainer, got um, trained under the big shots in the field of coaching from Richard Bandler, and you know what, she is also um, trained in EFT, eye movement integration, Reiki, counseling, and this vast journey you have, Jane. You have studied business studies in the university, and then been a sales manager and fitness instructor, then coach, counseling, clinical hypnotherapist. My God, it's a solid combination of multiple things. So, how did you jump into coaching from sales?
Yeah, I've got this thing about being authentic.
Oh,
And I was in this sort of sales job which didn't resonate fully with me. And at the time I was a mum then, and everything, it was that big change. Something had to change, massively. And that's kind of just before that time is when I read Paul McKenna's book, How to Change Your Life in 7 Days, that one. And I thought, I've got to change this, because at the time as well, I have got a personal story of my head being literally, it was like from spaghetti junction to total clarity. It's like a huge change, and I think it's taken a lot of work to do that as well. But that was when it was quite at that point when it was like really, sort of so I'd got this book, and at the back of it was this Ring NLP life chain. It was tiny writing, and I was like, what the heck? It looked a little bit like just, it's a bit weird or whatever, you know what I mean? And so I thought, what the heck, I'm going to ring it. And oh my God, that was really the massive start of like a huge change, and a beginning of a brand new journey of, clarity really. And no more BS, excuse me, do you know what I mean? It was so it was huge. And yeah, I've got a lot to be thankful for, Richard Bandler and his work, his field, and it's brilliant. And all of the coaches, brilliant. So yeah, so that was what I really wanted to do. To be honest, I've had my mum, from history, there's been a lot of where I've noticed lots of things. And I was quite, I was keen on wanting to understand more anyway. And yeah, so it was just, that was it. I thought, I can't understand why I didn't, when you get to a place where something else needs to, but you don't know. It's like you don't know what you don't know thing. And then when I got to this NLP seminar, I was like, this is what I didn't know that I really needed to understand. And yeah, so that was the beginning of it all, really.
Okay, that's how the journey began.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So, Jane, you come with a rich experience of training by, you got trained under the best in the industry, be it hypnosis, be it NLP, and all that. And a very basic question I want to start this session with. I have seen most of the time, Jane, that a well-formed, first well-defined outcome is lacking, and doesn't matter how many sessions we do, because of the foundation is not strong. The coaching sessions go on and on and on and on. So could you please give certain tips on having well-formed outcome, the importance of having well-formed outcome, and how it is going to help with the further sessions to achieve the results.
Yeah, one thing is, I think clarity is really important. I'm just thinking of someone recently where there was that much she could do, and it was like, well, should I do that? And we literally, because I could, be fully aware of what was going on, I had it all pegged together, and but then at some point we just have to allow it to kind of stop, just stop and get back to herself. You know what I mean? It was like too much out there instead of inside and sorting out what she really needed. And her first goal really was to be fully more aligned with herself. So that was, but I think this aligning with yourself and clarity really has to be in the mix, or it's a good thing to be in the mix, because otherwise your outcomes aren't quite, but then it's a growth, isn't it? It's like an organic growth anyway. So for well-formed outcomes, we always say, as you understand, it's like do it in the positive. Because if the first thing often when you say, what do you want, they'll go, well, I don't want that, I don't want that. And it's obviously got to be what you want, because more of what we're focused on is what we bring in, isn't it? So I like the when we talk about the grow model. So, I know there's SMART goals and there's the wheel of life one is useful, isn't it? Because it can bring all the aspects together of where you are, like the career, where like the pie chart, where you are now, where you want to be, where you were 5 years ago. We can be really specific. But I remember it was something Steve Crabb said, and it's something I've kind of just mentioned a little bit, is in the middle of that is who we are, really. And I think that's really important to remember, who we are, and we aren't what we're doing. We are who we are. And that's hugely important as well, isn't it? And I think that's the balance. I always like to really, make sure that balance is, I think that's is right, so yeah, it isn't just about forward focus, what's next, it's about being as well, being and doing, isn't it? So for outcomes, make them in the positive. But like you say, sometimes even though we kind of we see it, or we understand what we want, the pull could be more, you know what I mean? You're saying that we understand what we want, but maybe it isn't quite happening, or it's session after session. And sometimes it's the pull, isn't it? The desire to want it, the connection to the emotions, because it is the emotions, isn't it, that pulls us. I mean, in NLP, we talk about meta programs. One of them is the move towards something or moving away from something. So we're moving away from any sort of pain or whatever. We're moving towards what we want. And so if we can connect, all of the senses, because we understand as well, whatever we vividly imagine is in our brain, it's the same chemistry just about, so we've got to really sense these things as if we've actually been there and lived them, and then move towards them. And that's your brain working with you then, isn't it? Right, even more, and pulling it in more. So that's what I would say. For that, connect to the energy of it, the feelings of it, and that can propel us forward as well. And as a coach, I think it really helps when we willfully kind of doing it as well, because we are sending an energy, aren't we? And if we send in that will for that person and the belief mixed in with their wish, then it's just, I think magic can happen actually when that happens, really. I mean, it talked about the goal model, that's what I'm talking about there on the W bit of it, GROW. Part of that is why, and I know that Simon Sinek, I've forgotten how you say his surname, but he did like start with the why thing, didn't he? Why, when you use it for why do I want this, it's great because it brings in everything, doesn't it? I mean, don't use it for the opposite, like why did things go wrong, because our brain can go either way, can't it? So understanding what you are, connecting to it in a living it is really useful, I find.
Got it. Thank you. Here comes again, like, how to understand. See, when in the practitioner or master practitioner doesn't matter, generally, Jane. So, there's like confusion happens, of course, at times. Like, how do we understand the difference between Milton model, meta model, or meta programs? So, any any tips in
Right.
understanding?
Oh, well. I'm just laughing because the last thing that because every time I see, I've got an opportunity to listen to Richard, I will, Bandler. And the last time I listened to him, because I think when you found Richard, you found really like the key to it all. It's one thing he said in his last one I heard was, even all of the learnings he's already understood, he's still learning. There's always something to learn. We're always being better. I think he laughs at this, like, what's your best 5 tips or whatever, because we're always learning and there's always something to learn, isn't there? And with NLP, it's an NLP field. It's also a minefield because there's so much to learn, really, and anyone who thinks, oh, I've got it and then walk, it's unfortunate for them, because I'm learning every day with it, really. So for so much to learn. I mean, anyone who wants to understand more about how the mind works, it's all about subject behavior. It's all about how your mind works. It's like a handbook for your brain. And definitely, especially now, I think even more so than ever, we've got to be the ones in control of our own minds in the best way we can, purposefully. I really do. Do you? It's I mean, John Laval from Pure NLP, one of the main guys, he'll say it's if you don't take control of your brain, someone else will. And I totally understand what he's saying, because we've got AI now as well, haven't we? I've seen where someone else can connect to a machine, and the other person's got some sort of machinery there, and they can literally lift their hand up without them being in control of it. So I think in lots of ways it's so essential now that we really understand these type of techniques and tools. So back to the question of so you talked about meta programs, the meta model, and the Milton model.
Yes.
Right. So talking about meta programs are things like, like cognitive biases that we've got, friend or foe, all the cognitive biases that we understand. There's loads of them. Well, meta programs are sort of similar. So we've got things like, I mean, there's loads of those as well. We've got, are you a person? And you can hear it in people's language. I mean, you don't understand NLP, don't you? As well. Yeah. You do NLP?
I do.
Yeah. So, so the language we hear it, don't we, with people, where they're going. So if I was going, oh, I wouldn't want that, that's someone moving away from something. And if they're saying something like, oh, I can't wait for that, it's like they're moving towards it. And so that would be a meta program. So say it was a line, isn't it? It's like move towards, move away, and whereabouts are we on that? But we all do all of it, don't we? But often it's stronger at some point down that line, or so that's a meta program. Things like detailed and big picture, isn't it, is another one. So which is where what we'll call, and I'll talk about the language in a minute, but part of the language side is the meta model, isn't it? And that's when we get really specific with things. So it's like, well, how specifically are you running that pattern? Or, who are you talking about specifically? Because we do all of these things with language that can delete or distort or generalize things. And it's about being really specific, because sometimes it's like, oh, actually it isn't that, it's something else, you know, when they get specific, isn't it? So that meta program is specific big picture. Big picture would be more the Milton model, you know, it's more artfully vague language. And so with big picture, you would move somebody, like say, well, if you were a bird in the sky or whatever, what would you see now? And that's sort of seeing more than what that are down there in a very detailed, specific way. So that's, if that makes sense. So that's that detailed versus big picture. So there's lots of different meta programs that we say, isn't it, for that? But then there's the language is huge with NLP, and it takes some practice, I think, to really tune into, because, you know, in a conversation we're doing our thing, aren't we? But then really, when the better, you know, better trained people are within NLP, they can have this conversation, but they can also track where you are and where you need to be. And so, you know, it's amazing, isn't it? I remember once in my training that we did this exercise where there was three of us, so we were talking to somebody, and then this other person behind was doing all sorts of things, and we had to have this conversation and then also track, well, what the heck is this person doing? And it was so funny, but to be able to divide attention but be attentive, I think is a brilliant skill as well. So language is the meta model and the Milton model. You know, Milton Erickson was awfully vague, hypnotic language, brilliant for storytelling, isn't it? And metaphors are lovely for our brain to understand things, aren't they? And the meta model, it's like the opposite, very specific. Yeah, and so so I hope that's enough for now.
Enough. Gives a basic idea. Thank you. Yes. Now let's talk about the chunking part again. So it's again, I think it's closely related to my previous question, because, you know, when we want to go to specific, or we want to, so what is the benefit of lateral chunking or downward chunking or upward chunking? Again,
So
it's close to the previous question what I asked, but still.
Yeah, because I know I was aware that I was starting to talk about that with the detailed versus the big picture, because that's kind of where we are with what we call chunking, isn't it? And it's really useful in lots of ways, because sometimes we really do need to get. I mean, if we're a CEO in a company, we want to be big picture, don't we? Because if we understood all the like exact details of everything, I mean, you know, but then again, if you really, really, you know, good that way with your mind, where you can go detailed and big picture, then when you need to be specific, you can be, but then you can move your head back to the big picture of the overall run of a company, can't you? So, you know, there's things where sometimes people are just, you can't see the wood for the trees, so you need to get out of that, don't you? And sometimes just see a different perspective as well. So there's those reasons for chunking up or chunking back down into specific. Is that all right? Is that enough?
Yes. Okay, so then comes
I was just going to say on that point as well, you know, questioning is really, really useful, and good questions, because questions can really direct us, can't they? You know, how specifically puts our mind to specifically that point, or, you know, you can do all sorts of different questions, like, and what would you, if you were there now, what would you see? Or, you know, if you knew someone who talked about visual things a lot, you would talk more visual language, wouldn't you? So, well, what would you see when you're there? And so you're already assuming that person's going to be there at some point, and what they're seeing now. So it's lovely for, you know, all sorts of reasons, and that sort of directing a person in a good way as well. So.
That's because, you know, once the questions, depending on like the purpose, should we chunk up or chunk down or lateral it through questions. Thank you for bringing that point, that questions makes huge difference in bringing the clarity in the client. Thank you.
You're
Yes.
welcome.
And Jayne, like you have done so many modalities as well. Like, could you please tell how important is to bring changes at unconscious level? Then,
Well,
because I don't know why am I postponing. I don't know why I'm not able to manage my time or whatsoever. I'm not aware at all. So still, like, what is the importance of bringing changes
oh,
at unconscious
oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah, aren't we all? I was
level?
just laughing to someone recently just because I realised that I was doing, making too many meals for my teenage boys and
Okay.
just, and then I thought, wait a minute, I'm just diverting everything, instead of doing what I really need to be doing, kind of thing. So there was, yeah, so we're, it's lovely to keep being aware of our own patterns, isn't it? And we're constantly unfolding when we're on this type of self-improvement thing, aren't we? Anyway, um, so unconscious, I think, it's going back to authenticity for me. It's like, in fact, there's a quote. What to say? I've got it here because I wanted to say, a design is perfect when there's nothing else to take out. And I really don't know who said that, but I love that because I think that's when we are cleaner in ourselves. We really are truly us. But also, then we want to be bringing good things in, don't we? And I think that's when we can learn from other people. Can't we? There's always something to learn. We can always be better. And so I think it's twofold. It's like two sides of the coin, cleaning it all up. But what we've learned, we have to unlearn, keep what's good, and do that, and keep learning from others as well. Always, always be a student. I think there's always something to learn, isn't there? So the unconscious is huge, isn't it? It's what pulls us, and it's what we do. After, like I said there before, it's like, why am I doing this? What happened there? And it's gone off again doing it, because I think, isn't it, when we start to change things, it's like we've got, like the hypothalamus. It's like our thermostat. It's like our biological thermostat, isn't it? So we've got, so when it always comes back to that, if we set the timer on heating or whatever, it'll go to that time that we set, no matter if it's cold outside or warm outside. We've got that thermostat within our home or whatever, and that's our hypothalamus, isn't it? That's the job of that does. It kind of checks everything out and it keeps it balanced. But once we sort something unconscious, we've got, say we've got the base here, as our homeostasis, our balance, where we are, then it becomes there, doesn't it? And then it becomes, so our natural state of being changes, as long as we are adaptable, flexible, and do the work, I think, isn't it? So it's just that natural, this is where we're at. That's what seems to be coming into my world at the moment, because this is where I'm at. And I think the unconscious is all of that, isn't it? It's like what brings it back to that homeostasis, that where we are now, which is changeable all the time, because we've got so many tools, especially NLP, that do that, the hypnosis. So that, but also on the other side of it, we do have a will, and that can be really strong. And if you've got the will with the unconscious, like being authentic together with your true values, I mean, how great can that be? And if when we do it all together, in a way that people come together, then that, like the starlings, when they come together, they can be individual, yeah, but when they come together, how beautiful the formations are, aren't they? And there's that's how I see it as well, really.
And here comes just one basic question, Jayne. So, new code, NLP, or classical code? Which one do you prefer? And
Oh,
because
that's like
you chose to get trained under Bangalore, so that's why I asked
well,
this.
I've done, you know, I have trained with both. I did want to say,
Oh, you have
oh, but
trained
come
with
on.
Grinder as well.
Oh, I've trained mostly with Bangla. Oh, come on, Bangla's the genius. You can't get away from that. But yeah, I think we can learn from anything, though, if I'm being a bit more politically correct, which I don't like to say. I'm not that way. But I noticed with the new code, it clicked a bit well. It was the physical modeling. You know, I mean, when we do the physical movement, the muscle memory thing. But of course, we can do that in our minds as well, and it's just the same thing anyway, really. But hey, I'm Bangla, totally. But you know, I mean, but you know, everyone's doing a good job, aren't they? We're all doing what we can out there, and so I think it's all good in that way. As long as we're making positive, great changes, then it's great, isn't it? I know the new code. It was the link. It's funny, I'm talking about linguistics and I've got tongue tied there. But he was like the linguistics swindler, wasn't he? The guy. More
John
about the
Grinder.
linguistics and everything.
John
Yeah,
Grinder.
John Grindler. But Richard's the genius.
That's
Isn't he?
the one statement.
Good money he is. I mean,
Okay. And Jayne, could you suggest any good NLP books for coaches?
well, anything with Bantler in really. I've got. Can you see that one?
Yes, yes, yes.
Make your life great. And I have actually read that this one. Look. You can see when it's turned up. I must admit I haven't read them all yet. I've got to say there's lots that I certainly need to be putting more time in reading them. And Kate Benson and Richard, this one, the
Could you
teaching
just
excellence
bring that
one.
book closer?
Can you see
No, the title
it?
is. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, you're right there. So this one,
Teaching excellence. Wow.
yeah, it might have a different cover. That's without the cover on.
Okay.
This is what I don't know if you can see that. Is it the right way around? It's got to Jayne. Teaching is a work of heart. Isn't it just though? Oh, I mean, when I read that, I was like, so yeah.
Lovely.
So that's Kate Benson with Richard. Anything with Richard in, isn't it? Anything with Richard. Owen Fitzpatrick's done a lot of books with Richard.
I got two things. You said Richard is genius, and read anything from Richard.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think we need to go further really than the main. You know, when we talk about modelling with NLP, it's like clicking into that person. If you've got a deep rapport with that person, you can learn. You know, we've got mirror neurons, haven't we? And so we can learn those. There's loads of times when I've had to move from those past, you know, chaos things that I've learned growing up with. What I did was connect to. And it was funny, it would just come into my reality. It was like the next thing I had to learn, but I literally connected to their basically energy. Do you know what I mean? Like what they were doing, the whole deep rapport of it. And I think that's how we can learn, you know, that's a good way to model. I don't think you have to just do this like, I'll move this way and move with there. Because I think that's someone trying to connect with someone. But if you're doing it with your mirror neurons, with what we would call empathy, I suppose, you know, but if you're doing it in a way that's useful, then this is great to do that. And who better to learn from than Richard? He understands so much more than I think anyone could understand. So so definitely I would go with the main guy. You know, if you're going to model anything, model from the best. So
But
you know.
why not, Richard?
I mean, maybe not for golf though. If you wanted to learn golf, don't go to Richard, obviously.
Yes.
Well, I think.
Yeah. And perhaps the last question for this interview, Jayne. So I'm more curious about you. You have learned eye integration as well, so eye movement integration. So could you please tell what is the role of eye movement and what is this eye movement integration? Where all did you implement it and everything that you want to share about eye movement integration?
Yeah, well, part of eye integration. So it's the movement of the eyes that connect you. Because one thing, well, back to Bandler, actually, what you noticed years ago was, isn't it, that people moved the eyes when they were, like up to the left mostly was visually remembered things. So when they remembered things, they would look up to the left mostly, and to the right was when they're imagining lovely things or whatever, imagining whatever. And in English we say, oh, I'm feeling downright whatever. That's because that's what we do. We look down to the right generally, but it isn't 100%. Often it's the people who are left-handed that go the other way. I'm left-handed, so when I even talk about that, it's great when I'm coaching, because if I'm talking with my past, it's that my past would, facing somebody, it's the same direction, so it's a mirror. So that's useful but in the main, if you know what I mean. But so the oh, my mind went blank there, what we were talking about. Isn't that funny?
Eye movements.
Yeah, so you understood about the eye movement, and we must be connecting to maybe what if it's out here, holographic or whatever. We're connecting to something that we're seeing and feeling. But that's the same with the eye integration, and they'll go to different points because you can see in your eye there's a flicker or something that's like, oh, and they'll work on that area to clean it up. But when I noticed, actually, when I did it, I felt like my own way of doing it was better from the training at the time. But I know it's out there anyway now. But what I did was, when you have the best resources and the feelings you can, it was even sort of doing, imagine a figure of eight. A figure of eight in your eye would like kind of cover the whole area and go the other way as well. And I noticed it kind of integrated things anyway. And really, for eye accessing, to even just let your eyes flow in fact, that reminds me as well, years ago, before doing eye access and before realizing that this was a useful thing to do with the good state, I think it was Matt Hudson. I think one of the things he said was, imagine you've got Bob the Builder. no, the cleaner, like a cleaner, like a window cleaner, whatever. He said, imagine it, he's in your eyes, and he's literally, you're moving your eyes around and it's cleaning up all of your, and that was years and years ago. And then one of the things I did was eye access, and I thought that reminds me of that a bit. But then they were accessing, when we learned it was sometimes it was negative feelings that they were dealing with. And to me, it's like, if you can put the best state doing that, a bit like the Bob the Cleaner thing, then that works way better. And also what you're doing is you're connecting yourself to yourself, it's like so you're becoming more sort of fully authentic and connected, instead of parts integration is something we did in NLP. I think they don't do it so much now, do they?
Yes.
But you know what I mean? It's like bringing all those parts of us together anyway, so you can kind of do that with the infinity symbol.
Infinity symbol. I like the cleaning part. It's nice.
Bob the Cleaner. Yeah, that was my thing. I don't know if it was from him or if he'd learnt it somewhere else, but Bob the Cleaner in your eyes, yeah.
So, Jayne, thank you very much, because it was in a nutshell. These are the questions about NLP people often ask. So I thought, let me put all this stuff in one interview, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to get benefited from this talk.
I hope so.
Yes, and I'll people who want to reach out to Jayne for help, all her social media links, website, everything will be made available in the YouTube description. So from there, you can reach out to Jayne. Thank you very much, Jayne. It was wonderful having you on.
Welcome, Angie. Lovely to meet you.
It was
Thank you,
wonderful,
Nadine.
wonderful experience. Thank you.
Take care. Bye now.